My name is Frank Ally. I'm a California attorney primarily focusing on family law issues. Now let's get started. The topic of this episode is community property. This is going to be part one of a series of videos on community and separate property. This first video will try to keep things easy, and so you have a basic understanding. We'll get more complicated as these episodes go on. So the basic idea is that before you're married, we have two people. We're going to call them Fred and Wilma. They are individual people. They are running their individual lives. They are doing their own thing. They are earning their own money. They are buying their own things. So Fred comes into the marriage. He has a 401k. He has a car. And he has a job that he earns a significant amount of money for. All that stuff belongs to Fred because Fred is an individual person. Wilma comes into the marriage, and Wilma has a job. And Wilma has her own 401k. And Wilma owns a house. And Wilma paid for all that stuff with all her premarital income. So what we have is we have two individuals who have their own lives, fall in love, get married to live happily ever after. The funny thing happens is that as soon as Fred and Wilma say I do, suddenly we've now created a third person. I'm going to call that person community. So Fred still goes to work at his old job, but suddenly that's not Fred's income, because the effort that Fred expends as a married man is considered community efforts. Therefore, his earnings now don't belong to him, they belong to the community. And likewise, Wilma has the same issue going on. The money she earns from her work, she brings in, that belongs to the community. And it doesn't matter if Fred maintains a separate bank account. That's still community money that he's earning. Same with Wilma. The basic rule is anything that's acquired during the marriage is community property. Now, there are some exceptions. I'm going to talk about that in part two when we talk about separate property. But the basic rule is you earn it during the marriage. It doesn't belong to you or you. It belongs to the community. Now, let's talk about that just briefly. I mentioned that Fred had a 401k and Wilma had a 401k. They each had $10,000 in their 401k. But now they're continuing to earn money and still contribute to that 401k. What's going to happen is that money they're putting into their 401k, once they get married, they're making community contributions to that 401k. So suddenly that 401k has separate property and community property in it. Same with Wilma. There's a basic rule that says anything acquired during the marriage is presumed to be community property. And if you want to claim something that you own is separate property, you have to prove it. You have the burden of proof by a preponderance of the evidence. This concludes part one of this episode. If I haven't told you enough yet, let's move on to part two. I'm Frank Ally. I'm your ally in family law. Thanks for joining us.